Former Detroit Lion Darius Slay was sent packing to the Eagles by Matt Patricia, Bill Belichick's protege. But big play Slay did not go quietly, saying he lost all respect for the Lions coach in 2018, according to ESPN's Michael Rothstein. Take a listen.
He told me I wasn't elite. He told me I had no business working out with Richard Sherman and Talib because I wasn't elite. And those are guys that are elite category, and I was just good. So I ain't had that much respect for Matt Patricia much as a person, because it was hard for me to play for him.
The discord stems from two instances in 2018. Welcome back to First Take. It's yours truly, Stephen A. Smith. Molly Kiram Rose is having some technical difficulties. That's why I am sitting in the host chair. We welcome to the show right now Damian Woody, two-time Super Bowl champion. Let me be very, very clear. I'm the host right now. You will speak when spoken to. You will be respectful, okay? And you will make, and Matt, by the way, sit up in your chair when I'm talking to you, okay? Make sure you do all of these things, and you will speak and you will keep your comments crisp and concise. You will not talk longer than I say. I'm running the show today. Max has adapted, somewhat begrudgingly, but he's adapted. You will do the same, Woody. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show.
Damian.
Are you ready?
Stephen A. Stephen A. pulled the plug on Molly's whole situation. Stephen A. snuck to Molly's undisclosed location and pulled the plug just so he could do this to us.
Hey,
I know
let's
Stephen
get
A.
right to it because we got some football
for the longest.
What? Let me tell you something.
I've been to do this for the longest, trying to take over the show. But I already told you, when I'm on the show,
let's get right to some football issues, please. Let's get right to it. Darius Slay, you heard what he had to say. Max, I will start with you. Your thoughts about what Slay had to say about Matt Patricia.
This seems to me like two guys who both have outsized views of themselves. Both Patricia and Darius Slay. And Darius Slay has been very good at times, no question about it. But that helps a player oftentimes. When a player has a big ego about himself, so long as he can fit within a team concept, that helps him. Stephen A., I think about an individual sport like Deontay Wilder, right? I know he's coming off a loss, but for the longest, it wasn't just that he could punch, it's that he viewed himself as champion, as great, as special, and that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think that's the case with a lot of top players. So even if Patricia thinks that Darius Slay needs some humility and needs to understand really where he fits in, and he's not quite at the upper level, maybe not anymore if they thought he lost half a step or something, I don't really know that that's productive, but okay, that's what it's from Slay's point of view. From Patricia's point of view also, he seems to not really have a sense of self. Who's Matt Patricia as a head coach? You know, it's one thing and that's why Slay could say I didn't really respect him, because the stuff you did with Belichick accrues to Belichick's greatness. What have you done as a head coach that gives you standing to talk to a player who does have standing in the league like that? So I think this is really an issue of two people, both in Slay and Patricia, who have kind of outsized versions of themselves. The difference is, in Slay's case, it can be productive. In Patricia's case, I would think it's counterproductive if he comes off that way to players without his bona fides to back it up.
Woody, you may speak. Go ahead.
Well, listen, man, I think what happens with a lot of guys that come from this Belichick tree, man, is they literally try to take the Patriot way, the Patriot culture, uproot it and take it wherever they are. And I've had a discussion with many people. It doesn't work that way. If you can't learn to be yourself and build your own culture, 9 times out of 10, you're going to fail. And I think that's what we're seeing in Detroit right now. Matt Patricia wants everybody to be cookie cutter. He wants everybody to be similar to how it was in New England. But I think the real coaches knows how to adapt to different personalities. Bill Parcells was the master of it with the New York Giants back in the 80s. So you come from the New England Patriots organization, you try to do it that way, and then guys aren't buying in. Because you know what makes guys buy in? winning football games. Okay, Jim Caldwell, his last year went 9-7. Matt Patricia in 2 years in Detroit has only won 9 games. So how can you expect a guy like Darius Slay to buy in when the results aren't there on the field? And when Darius Slay doesn't buy in as one of the best players in the organization, then guess what's going to happen? A lot of other guys on that roster, they're not going to buy in as well.
Well, the interesting part about what you're saying, Woody, is that, listen, in the 2 years that Matt Patricia has been in Detroit, he's 9-22-1. 9-22-1. By the way, I won't even get into his hairdo, how haggardly dressed he looks half the time. He doesn't look like a professional at all. He really, really needs to clean himself up. Max, I would suggest a trip to Brioni or Tom Ford or something. The man needs help. There's no question about that in terms of how he looks and how he carries himself. Presentation does matter just as much as results sometimes, or at least before results. He's got neither working for him at this particular moment in time. And then when you take into account the fact that Matthew Stafford still hasn't progressed and hasn't achieved despite the talent that we know he has, and then you've got a star like Darius Slay that you want to insult or disrespect, it makes no sense whatsoever. Now, we've seen stuff like this happen before. Like, for example, you have some people, I don't want to say the disrespect, but people applaud the great Popoviches of the world for being able to coach Tim Duncan, and Popovich would be the first to tell you that he's grateful for Tim Duncan for allowing himself to be coached all of those years. So one could easily reverse it, look at Darius Slay, and say, you know what? What about being coached? The problem is a guy like Matt Patricia doesn't necessarily have the cachet, and you have assistants who walk in the jobs believing that they have cachets because of what they did as assistants, not recognizing the fact that the people who usually get the most credit is the head coach. The rare exception is somebody like a Buddy Ryan when Mike Ditka won the Super Bowl as head coach of Chicago in 1985, and both him and Buddy Ryan got carried off the field because the defense was considered separate and apart from everything else. But that is incredibly, incredibly rare in the National Football League, and nobody brings that up. Having said all of that, Woody, my question to you would be this. What do you think Darius Slay is going to do for the Philadelphia Eagles now that he no longer has the excuse of despising his coach in Detroit? Because that's not going to be the case in Philadelphia, obviously, with Doug Peterson.
Well, listen, Doug Peterson has something that that Matt Patricia doesn't have. He has a Super Bowl. He's been successful as a head coach for the Philadelphia Eagles. So he's walking into a situation, into a highly successful organization, highly successful head coach. So he's more adept to probably buying into the whole system. Now, has he fallen off since 2017 in his Pro Bowl year? Yes, he has. He's still a very good corner, and he walks into the building being the best corner in Philadelphia. So I think this is two totally different situations between Detroit and Philadelphia.
And importantly, you know who he does work against? Amari Cooper. And it's not like Odell is in New York anymore. So when you start looking at the NFC East, his best matchup is his chief rival's best player right now. So that works for Philadelphia. Stephen, I want to address something you said about coaches. And this is not my original point. And the Lakers beat writer who made this point can DM me later so I can shout him out because I'm forgetting who said this, going back about 5 years. The difference between Mike D'Antoni and Phil Jackson, Stephen A., is when D'Antoni didn't have his star buy in, his attitude on the Lakers that year was like he just threw up his hands. Well, the guy won't buy in. In that case, Kobe Bryant. Phil Jackson would think of a way into the star's psyche. Now, I know football and basketball are different, but there's a big difference between a coach who says my way or the highway and forget this guy or whatever, and a coach who not only gets the talent in place, but then says, how do I best use what I have? Because in the end, as was famously said, you are what your record says you are. I predict Slay will be much happier in Philadelphia.
Yeah,
but Max,
Woody,
I was saying that
to interject. I'm actually giving you permission to interject. You didn't ask for it. Make sure you ask next time, but you may interject.
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. Just because you running this show don't mean you run me. All right, so let's make that real clear
What?
right now. You
What?
see the type of shirt I got on. I got no
Didn't you hear
tie.
Max
I got,
tell you what
got
I
a
did to
plaid
Molly's
shirt on
microphone?
right now, and I'm
Didn't you hear
I'm
that?
sitting at the crib. What?
Did you hear what I did to her microphone? Do you want that to happen to you? Do you want to be talking over the airwaves
Amy,
and
he'll
nobody
unplug
hears you? You better watch your mouth.
Yeah, whatever. You're not gonna do anything over here. Believe that.
Anyway, by the way,
Now, what I was
let
gonna
me say this.
hold on. I'm not finished talking.
Oh, I wasn't
Okay?
aware.
I'm
I
not
wasn't
finished
aware.
talking.
Watch your tone.
Now, Matt,
your tongue.
now
Watch your
listen,
tongue.
when you bringing up Dan Tony, that's why I brought up Parcells, because it doesn't matter the sport. The elite head coaches know how to play the psychological aspect because you're dealing with so many different personalities on the team. That's what I'm talking about with Matt Patricia. You can't just uproot the culture and think that it's just going to work. You got to be able to deal with all the different personalities.
I totally
Now,
agree
Stephen
with
A.,
that.
you
I'm
can
of the
talk.
mindset, too. I'm of the mindset, you better watch your mouth, man. Step back, lean back, man. Lean back. How about that? Here's the deal.
You lucky
When I
I'm
look
not
at the
gonna drink my
Philadelphia Eagles,
coffee.
if this defense improves with what we've been saying about Carson Wentz, assuming that they're not going to be just decimated with the injuries that decimated them last year, even though they still managed to get to the playoffs despite all of those things, I think this could be a significant upgrade for the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll wait and see. Before I go to break, go to bump. Max Kellerman, I'm seeing you didn't have a tie. We'll talk about that later. Damian Woody, goodbye with your
Casual
disrespectful
Friday,
self.
brother.
Coming up next,